Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome into College Football Kickoff Live. That is Alex Dono from Locked On Canes. That is Kenton Gibbs of Locked On ACC and Locked On Wolfpack. And thank you for making College Football Kickoff your lunchtime listen every single Friday. Guys, I don't know if you saw this, but Ryan Day got rightfully emotional when an 86-year-old man said, "I think Ohio State is going to lose." Kenton Gibbs, what a touching moment with Ryan Day and America.
You know, let me tell you something. The only time you should be getting mad at what an 86-year-old is saying in today's day and age is when they're in Congress. That's it. That is all. What are we doing here, Ryan Day? Stop being – that's why he called you soft. That right there is why he called your team soft. You sat there and got emotional. We showed you, didn't we? Lou Holtz, we beat you. We did it. Ryan, stop it. Knock it off. Great win. Great win. Great. Put your program squarely in playoff contention. But stop being a whiny little baby about the thing, brother.
Yeah, Dono, I couldn't believe the first thing he said post game was, I want to know where Lou Holtz is. By the way, it's like 10:30 p.m. Lou Holtz has been asleep for hours. What are we doing here, Dono?
I didn't think it was possible to take something Lou Holtz says this seriously in 2023, especially knowing Holtz's ties to Notre Dame. So the biases are clear. So I guess for Ryan Day, you've got to dig pretty deep to find motivational material. And, you know, with Day going on and on about how physical his team was, well, you know what also helped you win that game? Notre Dame having 10 men on the field for the most important downs at the end of that game defensively. That might have also had something to do with it. Now, kudos to Ohio State for getting the win, because I know I'm on both sides of the fence here, guys, because I did pick Notre Dame to win last week, but you will recall I mentioned I'm a little bit concerned about Notre Dame's loser DNA because they tend to not show up in the biggest games when the lights are brightest. And in this case, they didn't even have the minimum number of players on the field to really complete these plays. And so, I guess for Mr. Day, whatever you have to use for motivation, I guess it worked. Your team's unbeaten. UBU.
Speaking of motivation, Dan Lanning, pre-game. Look, this is not Hollywood. This is the football field. That's some old school stuff. Like, that's what my coaches would have said. You know, that's what gets me fired up about football is when a coach says to the cameras, to his team, we're just going to go out there and win. And then the greatest diss track of all time when Oregon posts all of the chatter from Colorado pregame. Kenton, you were on the gridiron in college football. You saw some of the best jawing that our country has to offer. What do you make of Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks, especially in this beatdown?
They officially announced it. They officially told us. It wasn't said before. It was informal before this, but they've officially told us Deion Sanders is the Baba Yaga of college football. He is the big bad boogeyman. They are terrified. They are shaking in their boots. I don't think y'all understand how Oregon, of all teams, of all universities, Oregon, 50 combination, Oregon, more expensive facilities than anybody could imagine, Oregon, Phil Knight testing out everything that he can to give them the advantage. Oregon, that team is talking about, we're here for substance, not flash. Brother, that's what everybody's been saying about y'all for the last 20 years. That is literally the exact talking point that people have used when recruiting against Oregon, and now you're trying to flip it on his head to use it against somebody else. I'm telling you right now, these teams are shaking in their boots, and it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. Y'all not even going to be in the conference with them no more. You don't got to worry about it. Colorado just became the Big 12's heavy hitter. You're good, Dan Lanning. So, good for you. I know you're going to lose a lot of recruiting battles coming up here, but more power to you. You won this game, and you won it going away. Great job. I was wrong. You were right, Dan. You did it for substance, not for the clicks, even though you invited the cameras into the pregame locker room for the first time in quite some time. But
look, see, Dono, I am a whatever it takes guy. If this is what it takes to beat the brakes off Colorado, then you go out, you say whatever you want to the 18 to 22-year-old kids. Obviously, it worked. Are you pro Dan Lanning here?
No, I'm pro. I thought that speech was one of the coolest things ever. And I get what Kenton is saying about the facilities and the million jersey combinations, but I disagree with part of that about Oregon being Hollywood, because that football team is built to play physical smash mouth football. And that was the big difference in that football game, because Colorado is built more like a Hollywood attraction. So that speech, listen, it's not surprising that people took it the wrong way and some feathers were ruffled, because it's just society. Like if you sound like you're throwing shade at anybody, people are going to take it the wrong way. But I love that speech. It's listen, Coach Prime is obviously making Colorado better, despite what we saw on the field last week. He's making that program better. He's revolutionizing college football. But that team is more of a reality show than a football team. Like Coach Prime, I see this guy more in commercials than I see him actually on the sidelines coaching. Not to take anything away from his work ethic, I'm just showing you how many commercials this guy's in. So I think that's a powerful motivational tool to say, hey, we're going up against a program that's doing all this for clicks, and we're going up against Hollywood, but this game is played on the grass, not in Hollywood. I think that's just a really good motivational speech. Now, the other thing about our society now, Drake, is not only do people take things the wrong way, but everything a coach says these days is on camera, and it's going to get out in some form, right? So, people have been making speeches like that for 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years. Now it gets out, and people are going to take it the wrong way. But that was an awesome speech, and Oregon backed it up on the field. Had they lost the game, that would have been pretty darn embarrassing for Mr. Lanning, but they went out there and they smashed. So I love the way that went down.
They smashed, man. They smashed. That word means exactly what you think it means.
It means exactly what you think.
Oh, dude, talk about guys who aren't smashing, especially before marriage. Dabo Swinney had another rough week this week. I mean, at this point, you can't be Fire Dabo, right? We aren't threat level midnight yet, but we continue to have this conversation grows and grows. Kenton, you're locked on ACC. This thing doesn't look good.
Mr. Garrett Riley, come on in the room. Brother, you're on fraud watch. You're on fraud watch. You may be you're a few seconds away from being called one of the biggest and worst Nepo babies in all of college football, to the level of Ferentz son. I'm telling you that right now. You have that giant behemoth of a back listed at 235, looks like a healthy 245 to 250 in Phil Maffa. You have a human pinball, a guy that you can use in multiple ways, and Will Shipley back there. He just finds he's the new version of CMC, basically. He can do it on the air. He can do it in the ground. However you want it done, he can give it to you. And yet, on 3rd and 1, you put your quarterback in position to throw a screen. You're on fraud watch. Fake Watch Buster is about to pull out the diamond tester, brother, because you're looking bad. You're looking real funny in the light. But not only that, Clemson's defensive front is a very interesting group. They're not looking like the Clemson front of old. You're used to, I've always said this about Clemson. They always have at least 2 guys that are dominant, they have their way up front. And this year, it just hasn't happened. Xavier Thomas has come on and been a revelation. He's looked amazing so far this year. And then you're thinking, well, if he looks amazing, Tyler Davis is going to look great. And Tyler Davis, we about to put out an APB. We about to put out a bolo. Be on the lookout, because we need to go see you, Tyler. Come on. We need you, brother. If Clemson is to dig themselves out of this hole, because fun fact about Clemson right now, although they are 2-2, their 2 losses are both conference losses. They're at the bottom of the conference with Boston College.
Yeah.
If they're to pull themselves out of this hole, Tyler has to show up at a high level, because when he shows up, it takes the pressure off of Jeremiah Trotter Jr., off of Barrett Carter, off of that secondary that we just saw one of their top corners go down and all that. And the defensive coordinator over there has to answer some questions as well, because they stopped the run effectively all game, and you don't want to go too high in one of the biggest situations in the game after your starting corner goes down, when you've got 2 receivers that are averaging 6'5" and a half.
Yeah.
And when your corner gets dunked on, what do y'all say? Well, he just made a great play. No, you idiot. You left a corner that was a backup on an island with Keon Coleman, and you get what you get. Sorry to go on that monologue, but it just had to be said. Oh, yeah. There are multiple coaches for Clemson that y'all are on fraudulent.
Right. We're hearing and you gave the examples of the athletes. Dono, when you sit here, do you put it on the coordinators, on Dabo Swinney, on the NIL, on the portal? I mean, where do we go? Where's the root of this issue? Because something obviously is not going right at Clemson.
Well, all of the above, and also pretty dreadful in-game coaching decisions, because like Kenton was talking about, the play calling and the clock management down the stretch of that game was awful. I mean, I have to give a certain amount of credit to Florida State because good teams find ways to win. And I'm a firm believer of you make your own luck. And part of winning a football game is your coaches making less mistakes than the others. So I have to give credit to Florida State. But at the same time, Clemson, they snatched defeat from the jaws of victory in that game. That should not have been an L. They were just purely physically, for most of that game, the better team out there on that day at home, and they couldn't get it done. And I want to pick up on something that Kenton was talking about with coaches on Fraud Alert, and I want to talk a little bit about Garrett Riley, okay? Guys, we used to always talk about the Madden curse. I'm not sure if Drake is even old enough to remember when the Madden curse was
What's
really
Madden?
a thing.
I don't.
But we all know
name
Madden, but the Madden curse hasn't been a thing for a while. The new curse, I think, is the Broyles curse. So this Broyles award, it's given out, this award, annually to the top assistant in college football. And as you can imagine, a lot of Broyles Award winners, they get jobs elsewhere, whether it's a move to be a coordinator somewhere else or a head coach. So these last couple of years, I'm tracking this Broyles Award, and I know this all well and good because a couple of years ago, the team I cover, Miami, went and hired the Broyles Award-winning at the time offensive coordinator in Josh Gaddis from Michigan. It was an unmitigating disaster. It was, I don't know how this guy, I guess Jim Harbaugh was the one calling the shots up there when he was at Michigan. And that didn't work out. Garrett Riley last year wins the Broyles Award, and it's certainly not paying dividends at Clemson. So I'm going to start even tracking deeper years on this Broyles because that might be the new curse. It's not about Madden anymore. It's the Broyles curse.
Mike Broyles, 1964 national championship head coach at the University of Arkansas, who played on that team, who was the starting center on that team.
Jerry Jones. Yeah.
Unbelievable college. But look, this is proof that guys can just sit around and say names for hours on end, and it's the most fun game. Speaking of fun games, the biggest game of the week, the funnest game of the week, Ole Miss, LSU this week on the gridiron in our biggest game of the week. Let's bring in Stephen Willis with Locked On Ole Miss. Steven, welcome into Locked On College Football Kickoff Live. Coming off the Alabama loss, give me the state of this program going into a 4 p.m. gross, like nap time kickoff in the biggest game of the week against LSU.
Listen, we went into Alabama, and everybody talked about how Ole Miss had a real chance to win this game. And the first half of that game, it played out to where Ole Miss did have a chance in that game. And the defense played fantastic. But this is what we found out Saturday. Nick Saban's in Lane Kiffin's head. And the second quarter of that game was almost coaching malpractice. And as it got on and Alabama was still in the game and Ole Miss was up 7-6 at halftime, and you're like, well, we kind of know where this could go. And then sure thing, they kick a field goal. They make a big play where Jalen Milroe gets absolutely drilled and complete a touchdown pass. And it turns into like He-Man, by the power of Grayskull, that type of thing. And Alabama is Alabama, and they're the team that we all expected they could be, at least for a quarter and a half. This is an Alabama team that could probably lose 2 games this year. But in that quarter and a half, there was a jolt of energy, and you saw those 4- and 5-star players play like 4- and 5-star players. Now, I say all that to say this. Lane Kiffin wrote a lot of checks last week. He got the fan base all juiced up, and after that game, he took a rightful amount of criticism and from within the fan base. And it took a couple of days for Ole Miss fans to get over it, to move on. Ole Miss has LSU Saturday afternoon, the Magnolia Bowl, which, by the way, this game being played in September is absolutely ridiculous. This game belongs at Halloween. It needs to be at Halloween. But the fan base they're going to try and force themselves to get juiced back up, but they were let down pretty considerably after last weekend.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, Stephen. In terms of, we know that the fans are the fans, and when you lose, you're going to be the worst thing in the world, and when you win, you're going to be the best thing in the world and all that. But in terms of the temperature of the locker room and their chances in this game, talk to me about what you're looking at as far as, like, have you heard great things coming out of the locker room in terms of, like, hey, they got their heads up, they know everything's still in front of them, or is it like, there's a leery feeling around this team in general at the moment?
I don't know if there's a leery feeling around this team. The coach has the cornerback mentality. Going back and talking about that, Lane Kiffin turns the page. You can't be the internet troll that he is without, leaning on receipts. So I think the team is going to bounce back. Usually when the offense is clunky, like last year against LSU, the offense didn't look particularly good. Against the next Texas A&M the next week, Quinshon Judkins ran for over 200 yards. So I think they will be fine this early in the season. The Alabama game obviously is the most important game on the schedule for Lane Kiffin. He acts like it. He just acts differently. He calls the game differently. I don't know if the team is going to read too much into that. But we'll see. This LSU game is probably the difference between Ole Miss planning to go to as high as an NY6 type bowl and Ole Miss going to the Music City Bowl. That is probably what this LSU game means.
Well, and on this matchup, Stephen, obviously it's a really important game, and LSU are slight favorites on the road here. What do you see as being the biggest challenges going up against the Tigers? What concerns you most?
I think it's their front seven, because whenever you get told over and over again that you're an offensive genius, which people have done with Lane Kiffin for the last couple of years, you start to believe it. And Ole Miss has been sticking with running the second and third level RPOs. They're kind of slow developing plays. And that works fine against Mercer and Tulane and Georgia Tech. But whenever you play against Alabama, when you play against LSU, when you play against Georgia, that 3 seconds to make that play develop is all of a sudden going to be 2 seconds. And that's going to cause mistakes to happen. And I think that's one of the reasons why the major ranked win for Lane Kiffin hasn't come in a couple of years for Ole Miss. So if he is willing to tweak, I mean, there's not much that he has to do, but if he does that, you have a chance for this Ole Miss team to look a little bit different and put this team in a better position to be successful, because LSU's front seven, they're just as athletic as the guys that just played against Ole Miss. You have to earn the right to throw against that secondary, because that secondary is not particularly good. That's transfers from like Nicholls State and Southeast Louisiana. But you have to earn the right to be able to throw the ball downfield. And if LSU knows that the quarterback's going to have the ball for 3 seconds, he's going to be in the same spot, Harold Perkins is going to get home. I mean, that's just the way that works. But if you have variance in the tempo of when you release the ball, moving the pocket, running different stuff, zone schemes, gap schemes, run draws, run screens. If the defense doesn't know what you're going to do, this Ole Miss offense has a chance to be really, really explosive. But if they get predictable, LSU's going to eat them up.
Hey, Steven, I know looks can be deceiving, but honoring the 2003 team is a weird look. Why is this the thing that's happening this weekend?
Okay. Ole Miss was talking whenever they refer to this team as a Western Division champion. They got a trophy. I get that. And all of that. That's a horrible look, especially against the team that won the game.
Yes.
But that 2003 team was probably the best football team that has played at Ole Miss in the last 50 years. They deserve to be honored. It's 20 years later. Just don't talk about the SEC West Coast Championship. Talk about the fact that they went 7-1 in the league. You win 7 SEC games at Ole Miss, that's worth having a parade over. Maybe concentrate on that instead of this silliness about the Coast Division Championship. Boy, I was there. You know, I've seen the trophy. I know that it happens. I've looked at the record book. Ole Miss is on their record book. Everybody knows that LSU played in that championship game. Everybody knows that LSU won that national championship. And whenever you do that, it reeks of Central Florida putting up a national championship banner.
Hang the banner. Hang the banner. Ole Miss, co-West Division champions in 2003. Let's throw them a parade this weekend. That's Stephen Willis of Locked On Ole Miss. He's got LSU Tigers this week. Stephen, thanks for joining Locked On College Football Kickoff Live.
No problem, guys. Thanks.
We got plenty coming up here on Locked On College Football Kickoff Live, from interviews to Conference Confidential, the best bits in college football this week. Coming up soon, we also take you to Locked On Ducks, Spencer McLaughlin, talk playoffs with him. But first, Dono.
You don't have to choose between better hair growth and your health. Nutrafol provides a whole body health approach for men that promotes healthier hair, no drugs, no compromises, just better hair, guys. Go to Nutrafol.com/men to take their health wellness quiz. Identify causes of your hair thinning, and Nutrafol will give a personalized plan for better hair health through whole body wellness. Nutrafol supports healthy hair growth from within by targeting root causes of thinning, such as stress. We all have that. Hormones, environment, nutrition, lifestyle, and metabolism through whole body health. Take the first step to visibly thicker hair and healthier hair. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com/men and enter the promo code LockedOnCollege. Find out why over 4,000 healthcare professionals recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com/men, spelled Nutrafol.com/men, and enter promo code LockedOnCollege. That's Nutrafol.com/men, promo code LockedOnCollege.
All right, guys, let's take you to Spencer McLaughlin of Locked On Ducks as we talk playoff hopefuls. Spencer McLaughlin joins Locked On College Football Kickoff Live, affectionately known as Smiley around the office. Spencer, look, this Oregon Ducks team, some people will say that they proved it against Colorado and Deion Sanders. Other people will say, hey, Colorado's still fraudulent. I first want to start, less so than the playoff hopes and more so this week's game. How do you wrap up everything that happened?
Well, I think for Colorado, they were a great story. They are not a great team right now. That's going to change in the future with the way that Don's able to bring in talent. But I mean, after the Colorado game, look, was it intensely satisfying after all the smack talk from Colorado, be caught up in the buzz as an Oregon fan? Yeah, of course it was. It absolutely was. Did I leave the game thinking, oh, Oregon's about to roll through a loaded Pac-12 because they beat Colorado 42-6? No, not at all. They're still going to be an underdog at Washington. If Cam Rising is healthy, they're going to be an underdog against Utah. This Oregon team is really good because the Pac-12 is really good, and Utah with Cam Rising will be really good. If they don't have Cam Rising tonight against Oregon State, they probably lose that football game in Corvallis. He's playing a lot of urgency after their loss against Washington State. But I think that when you look at what Oregon's capable of, yeah, at their peak, they could make the college football playoff, but they have to get through Utah, Washington, USC, Oregon State, and the Pac-12 championship game. And I've, held the belief from before the season that the Pac-12 was going to miss the playoff again because I think there are a bunch of really good teams in the conference. I don't know that there's weeks so far. But if I told you guys right now, hey, Washington's going to lose to Oregon or Utah at home and USC on the road, is that a hot take? Is that a surprising thing to anyone? Is that out of the realm of possibility? No. I mean, you look at USC. Would it surprise anyone if they lost to Utah again? No, I've seen that story before. What if they lost to Oregon? Yeah, they could do that. And then these teams are going to match up in some form or fashion again in the Pac-12 championship game. I like where Oregon's at. I think their defense is vastly improved from a season ago, and the offense looks to be just kind of rinse and repeat from what they were last year. They're one of the best offenses statistically in the country right now, and they have everything firing. Yeah, they can be the best team in the Pac-12, but guess what? I don't know what Washington State's ceiling is, but I think their floor is a lot higher than a lot of people thought, and then the Cougs are not a team that are to be messed around with right now.
So I want to ask you this, Spencer, and trust me, it's not going to be about beautiful smiles. That really was the first time we saw. We got another one. We got a twofer today. That's beautiful. But in terms of this Oregon team, and you say like, hey, they're good, but they're not quite world beaters. What is the one thing that concerns you to say like, if a team is to beat us, they'll have to exploit this thing?
It's still the defense. The defense has faced a couple of, I think, solid tests. Texas Tech on the road and Colorado at home. They could not have played better against the Buffs. That's a unit who they are superior than in the trenches. The defensive line just mauled Colorado. It was not a fair fight. What does the defense do against USC and Washington, where it is going to be a fair fight? I still expect the defensive line to have some modicum of success in those two matchups, but it's going to be different. The secondary was dominant, but Washington and USC have better passing attacks. And I think that with Washington State as well, it's kind of comparable to the Colorado against without Travis Hunter on the other side of things. And I think there's just an element of unknown in that sense. Now, if Oregon is a good enough defense to, let's say, go 12-1 and win the Pac-12, this is what the defense, for the most part, would have looked like so far. But they're still trying to clean up the penalty problem. They're averaging 75 penalty yards a game right now. And if you do that at Washington, if you do that at Utah, if you do that against USC, or heck, against Washington State or Oregon State, that might be one too many extra opportunities and could cost you a football game. Like, Oregon has 70 more penalty yards at Washington. I don't know how they're in the football game. That'd be pretty darn tough. They escaped against Texas Tech. They had 100 yards. And that has improved over the last couple of weeks. The penalties have continued to come down, but they are not where they need to be. So I think that element of it still is kind of in the back of my mind, making me wonder, is this team at that level? They have looked that way against their opponents so far, but bigger tests still
Well, you've done a great job of very humbly breaking down reasons why Oregon may not end up winning the Pac-12 and may not get into the playoffs. But if they are able to do that, Spencer, if they're able to, let's say, run the table, what would be the primary drivers behind that? How would that happen?
It starts with 18th-year quarterback Bo Nix, of course. And he is the most experienced starter.
I grew up
watching
Bo Nix.
Yeah, we all did. I mean, it's crazy. It was just the second year of the Mario Cristobal era when he made his first start, and gosh, that was a lifetime ago in that neutral site matchup against Auburn in 2019. And I mean, it's just thrilled that we've gotten us to take it for what it is. I mean, having him at the helm gives Oregon fans the utmost confidence, as long as he is healthy, that the Ducks have a signal caller that can get you to the playoff, that can play at that sort of level. The end of the season got derailed a bit when pocket passer. He has to have his legs to be at his best. He has to have that full mobility component to be, a Heisman capable quarterback. But I mean, it starts with him. The offensive line's replacing a lot of pieces. So far, I think they've mostly passed the test. I want to see how they're able to run the football against a good front four in Washington, up in Seattle. But, after not running the ball well against Texas Tech on the road, they've run it exceptionally well each of the last couple of weeks, albeit against some weaker opponents there. But the offensive line's holding up in pass protection. Bo Nix looks really good. His weapons are deep. I mean, every position, I think you've got at least one NFL player. I think Terrence Ferguson, the tight end, is an NFL guy. Troy Franklin, of course, probably one of the top 5 receivers taken in the 2024 class. And then you have a couple dynamic running backs, one of whom is out with an injury right now in Noah Whittington. But Bucky Irving is the name that everybody knows, preseason first team, all Pac-12 kind of guy. So the offense has got all the tools, and I think the defense on paper is more talented than they were a season ago, and they still have something left to prove in that sense, but the early returns have been really, really good. So I think that Bo Nix, with his weapons and a more physical front four to pressure quarterbacks than what they had a season ago, those would be the reasons why, if Oregon gets to the playoff this year, God willing, that I'd be able to look back and say, yeah, this is how they got there. This is why Oregon was able to improve on their results from a season ago, is because Bo Nix is really good. They've got him a bunch of weapons, and the front four is much stronger than a season ago.
Spencer, maybe most importantly, before we get you out of here, who does Southern Utah have this week?
Southern Utah's got number 25, Central Arkansas, 6 p.m. Mountain Time at the Eccles Coliseum on ESPN+. I'll be on the call for that. And they're going for their first ranked win since 2018. So the Bears are coming to town to take on the Thunderbirds. This should be an electric one Saturday night at Eccles.
My mom and dad's alma mater, the University of Central Arkansas, might I add. That's
really,
Spencer
is it really?
Locked
is it
on
really?
Pac-12, Locked on Ducks. Spencer, thanks for joining Locked on College Football Kickoff Live.
Appreciate it, guys. Have a good one.
So the whole buy or sell thing on Oregon, what I struggle with here is you've got a Utah team that got to face here in a couple of weeks who just held UCLA and Chip Kelly to 7 points, and they were late fourth quarter 7 points. This is a defense in Utah that will dominate the Pac-12. They won the league 2 years in a row. They get Oregon at home. This conference runs through Salt Lake City. Dono, I don't see Oregon being a college football playoff team because I don't see Oregon winning the Pac-12.
Well, right. And the second half of that Utah conversation is they've already been dominating with their defense. And at some point, whether it's tonight or in the near future, their star quarterback, Cam Rising, is going to be back, which should elevate their offense because obviously, the offense was underwhelming against UCLA, but they didn't have to be any better than that because they had a pick 6 in the game and the defense was completely dominant. So I would figure when it comes to trending higher and higher, Utah would be the team to do that. Not only, as Spencer kind of touched on, Utah has had Oregon's number in recent years. So none of that bodes well for the Oregon Ducks in comparison, but I do still see Oregon as a really, 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 really good team. And I don't think that what they did against Colorado last week was strictly about Colorado being frauds or whatever else. I think we're going to see Colorado have a lot better offensive games in the near future. But to your point, I think Utah is the team to beat.
Yeah, Kenton, do you change your mind about Oregon at all after the Colorado game?
No. Let me quote NBA YoungBoy's song, Fresh Prince of Utah. It's going to be a parade in Salt Lake City, yeah, because that team that Utah team is something special. And I don't know why. I don't know what it is about Utah that makes everybody look away in horror like, it's ugly football. They can't be winners. They can't be good in the Pac-12. They're back-to-back conference champs, returning a ton of talent. And we're all just like, yeah, somebody's going to unseat them. We thought that they weren't going to win it the first year. And then we said, oh, well, Utah can't go back-to-back. Oh, well, they're bringing back their quarterback after going back-to-back. They're bringing back most of their talent after going back-to-back. But we still believe. We're still looking and searching. We're like Scully and Mulder and X-Files. I want to believe in somebody else, but we just can't do it. You can't do it. I'm sorry. With all due respect, Bo Nix has been playing quarterback in college football since the beginning of time. More power to him. I'm sure he was playing back there when the helmets were soft and all that. Good for him. But the reality is simple. No amount of Bo Nix, no amount of saying we don't do it for the clicks, no amount of Alton Stadium getting loud, rowdy, screaming, yelling, busting eardrums is going to make that team better than Utah. I'm sorry.
Well, and let me add something else in, because I'm sure there's probably people watching this and listening to this like, well, how come they're not bringing up USC? I mean, they've got the reigning Heisman Trophy winner and Lincoln Riley. Like, to me, I don't quite put USC in that conversation either, because I don't think they have the defense that they're going to need to have to win the Pac-12. So I'm not ignoring them. I'm not sleeping on them, but I don't think they're above Utah in the pecking order either, as we saw in last year's proceedings.
No,
I would say if this was like if this was a scenario in sports that we compare it to, I think that without realizing it, Utah is Larry Bird walking into the 3-point shooting contest saying, all right, boys, who's competing for second? Because I think that's what's honestly happening. They're the most complete team in the conference. They're the team with the least holes that you look at and say, man, they got to get that cleaned up by a mile in terms of that conference. So to me, it's, hey, again, the schools who talk about we do this for substance may not have the substance to beat the actual substance team in the Pac-12, which is Utah.
Yeah. And if you're a fan of any of a Washington State or Oregon State, a dark horse, sure, right? There are teams that could sneak up and win this league. Oregon could, but it's Utah's Pac-12 until somebody else proves otherwise. This is eBay Motors Locked On College Football Kickoff Live until somebody else proves otherwise, Dono.
And I don't think anyone will, because, folks, passion, drive, and patience, what brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebay.com/motors. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, and exclusions apply.
1 second, guys. I'm getting a hotel phone call. Sounds like it's time to go around the country as we do our first Conference Confidential. We start with the Big Ten. Take it away, Craig Sheeman.
everybody's still talking about Ohio State's impressive road win last weekend in South Bend, Indiana against number 9 Notre Dame, and good scheduling by the Buckeyes. They get the week off. Congratulations. The Michigan Wolverines hit the road for the first time this season. They play at Nebraska. Keep an eye on the Huskers quarterback situation when Jeff Sims comes back from that high ankle sprain, because Heinrich Harburg is 2-0 in his place. He's done a pretty nice job. If Penn State annihilated Iowa last week, what are they going to do at Northwestern this week? Although kudos to the Wildcats. They've doubled their win total already from last season. They had that 21-point deficit they erased and won in overtime against Minnesota last weekend. And don't look now, but the Maryland Terps could be 5-0 if they beat Indiana this weekend. Of course, the Hoosiers needed 4 overtimes to beat Akron at home last week. Illinois is at Purdue. First-year Boilermaker head coach Ryan Walters was the defensive coordinator at Illinois last year. He wants to win this one. By the way, the Boilermakers have yet to win a game at home this season. Michigan State travels to Kinnick Stadium to take on Iowa. The Spartans and the Hawkeyes are both struggling right now with their identities, although the Hawkeyes somehow are 3-1 at this point. 2 non-conference games, Wagner at Rutgers and Louisiana at Minnesota, round out the schedule around the conference this week. Enjoy the games. I'm Craig Sheeman for Locked On Big Ten.
5 games on the slate in Week 5 for the Pac-12, and the best one comes on Friday night in Corvallis. Spencer McLaughlin here for Locked On Pac-12. Oregon State goes back home, which is where they need to be right now after the loss they took in Pullman on Saturday, in which their defense allowed Cam Ward to go for over 400 yards. He threw 6 incompletions, accounted for 5 total touchdowns. It was not an inspiring effort from Oregon State's defense, which has been a staple of that team the last couple of years. They might be taking on Utah backup quarterback Nate Johnson again on Friday night for the Utes. Offensively, we might see him on the field, and that's an opportunity for the Oregon State defense to rebound. And it's not overstating things to say Oregon State's goals are within reach, but on the line this Friday against Utah. If they want to reach the Pac-12 championship game for the first time in program history, they have to win this football game. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Asking a team to go 7-0 just to have a chance to get into the conference title game is not reasonable with the way the Pac-12 has looked as the best conference and the deepest conference in America right now. Colorado goes to USC this week. USC is going to win that game pretty comfortably, I imagine. The question is, what does Colorado look like coming back home off of the blowout loss last week against Oregon? But Utah and Oregon State, that's the headline game on Friday night. No Cam Rising once again. DJ Uiagalelei completed just 50% of his passes against Washington State on the road. Can he be better against the Utes defense, which has looked like the best in the conference through 4 weeks so far? The Utes are 4-0, and they played their closest game of the year last week at home against UCLA, but they have to do it on the road against an Oregon State team that is 13-1 at Reser Stadium over the last couple of seasons. Those are the headline games. Don't sleep on Arizona and Washington. The Huskies have been blowing everybody out all the time. Are they going to do it again? They're 18-point favorites on the road in Tucson against a sneaky and quiet 3-1 Arizona football team right now. That's it for Week 5. Tune into Locked On Pac-12 on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Dave Schultz with your Week 5 Sun Belt preview. Bunch of good ball games, including the Raging Cajuns going to Minnesota, and this will be all about the rushing attack. Minnesota's going to rush for 191 yards a ball game. Can the Cajuns slow down that big offensive line? Cajuns are rushing for a bunch of yards. Can they run it against Minnesota's big defensive line? Zion Chris getting his first start as quarterback on the road for the Cajuns. You also have Georgia State, undefeated Panthers hosting Troy. Georgia State looking to go 5-0 for the first time in program history. Troy coming off a big win against Western Kentucky as they evened up their record at 2-2. Georgia Southern hosting Coastal Carolina. Is this the last stand for the Chanticleers as they would fall to 2-3 with a loss to Georgia Southern, who's also coming off a nice bounce-back win. Davis Brin, 4 touchdown passes at Ball State. But the big ball game in the conference is South Alabama off to JMU. South Alabama predicted to finish second in the West, JMU first in the East, and JMU with 3 very close victories. They're 4-0. They've kind of looked the part where South Alabama just hasn't. Outside of their victory against Oklahoma State, they have just not played very well, and it's going to be South Alabama's running game, 180 yards per ball game against JMU's rush defense, giving up 42 yards per ball game. They are susceptible to the pass, but that's only because nobody's been able to run against them. JMU was a 5.5-point favorite. It's down to 3. I think JMU wins this ball game because South Alabama just hasn't shown they can play consistent football this season. Please tune in to Locked On Sunbelt for your Week 5 Sunbelt recap. Enjoy the football, everybody.
That was Conference Confidential back here on College Football Kickoff Live. Guys, let's talk some booms and some busts. What we learned based on last weekend's games. And I got to tell you, if I'm looking at a team that has boomed right now, it has to be the Utah Utes. Because now, look, the experiment is over. Can Utah win without an offense? And the answer is yes. Hypothesis confirmed. Without Cam Rising, without a couple of other stars, their big tight end, big pass catcher has also been out for the last few weeks. They haven't needed the offense. They have still won games defensively, holding teams to their worst offensive outputs on the year. Utah at 4-0, having just won again, this time against a top 25 UCLA team, holding them to just 7 points. Give me the Utes as a boom. Kenton, let's go to you next.
I mean, y'all already know who my boom is going to be. I've told y'all about him all along. I've said that Dabo needs to call this man and be standing outside his house in Norman saying, baby, come back. You can blame it all on me. Very simply, the Oklahoma Sooners.
Dude, how, Kenton? They won by 14 against Cincinnati. They only scored 20 points. How is this?
I hear you. I hear all those things. But also, that Cincinnati team is better than we're giving them credit for. Number one.
I agree with that. I get. But why? But why?
But what do you mean, but why? Why is
they beat a bad Pitt team? They lost to Miami of Ohio.
So here's why I say that Cincinnati team is better than they're getting their credit for. Number one, we're looking at year one under Satterfield. Number two, we all know if there's anything to know about Satterfield's teams, there will be inconsistency. They will not play at their highest level every week. That is a guarantee if Scott Satterfield is your head coach. They will reach the highest of highs, and then next week have you out there like, is this a JV team?
Yeah.
Did we not? Are these guys not on scholarship? What happened? That's something that we know about that team. But the fact of the matter is, handling business in games where you should handle business is something that I value a lot. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care how anybody cuts it and slices it. That is why I don't do rankings up until week 4, because for me personally, it's meaningful to me if a team is handling business and not playing around with their food because somebody else is going to eat it in these early weeks. And to me, Oklahoma has done that again and again and again, including a game where many people, not going to say any names or point to any beautiful heads of hair on this show, me and Dono are bald, so I don't know whose head of hair we're talking about, predicted them to be upset. Oklahoma, Boomer Sooner, that's my boom, baby.
Kenton, booming with OU and Brent Venables, the skeleton man. Alex Dono, who's your boom this week?
I was tempted to go with Oregon, but at a certain point, I would just be piling on Colorado. So I'm going to give my boom to a team that maybe not so quietly anymore has just been dominating the season so far, 4-0, number 7 in the country, and that's the Penn State Nittany Lions. Now, this wasn't a game that they were supposed to lose, but still, they shut out a quote-unquote ranked opponent last week. They shut out 24th ranked Iowa 31-0. You start to hear now talks about their defensive coordinator, Manny Diaz. Is he becoming, a head coach candidate in the upcoming cycle? And yes, I know Iowa's got that nepotism offense under Brian Ferentz, and they can't score on anybody, but 31-0 win for Penn State. They have handled their business and beyond to this point. That team is absolutely booming, and I'm curious to see if they can, keep themselves in that conversation come college football playoff time, because obviously they've got tough opponents in a tough conference they need to win first.
We've talked about how Oregon, that was a smash. Colorado, bust. Let's go to the bust conversation. Kenton Gibbs.
First of all, let's start here. Drake Toll's wordplay, right? The Drake Toll's innuendos, always a boom. Always a boom. I don't care what anybody says. They are a boom from now until the end of time. But in terms of teams that I'm looking at, and I'm saying, hey, this is bad. This is really, really bad. I hate to have to say this, and I really don't want to do this because you know what? Let me stop lying to myself. Let me stop lying. I'm enjoying this a lot. The downfall of Clemson got me wearing suits. It got me wearing. Listen, I'm not gonna wear a suit to my wedding. You understand? I'm gonna go Bill Belichick at my wedding. But for Dabo Swinney's downfall, I can't even hold in the glee no more. I can't do it. I can't. Watching this team piss down their leg, do the coaching decisions and clock management. What was that drive at the end of regulation? You have a big run by one of the best backs in the nation to put you in plus territory. And what do? Do they take a timeout, Dono? Drake, do they clock the ball?
Why would you?
You let the clock run out
Yeah.
when you got the plus territory. What a unserious group. Oh, my God. Clemson, I'm just going to say this, okay? And I'm going to leave it here. Dabo, I really and truly hope that you embrace the portal and you embrace all the new things and all that. But I'm telling you, it's going to be an enjoyable ride watching y'all be this bad this year. Oh, it makes my heart smile. It makes me smile with my heart. Makes me drop the Spencer McLaughlin smile on them because I got to get one out today.
Dono, who's a bust?
I'm going co-bus. Clemson is one of mine. There's nothing I can possibly add to what Kenton just said, but I got to go with Notre Dame at the other. I mean, you talk about snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. You're at home against a good Ohio State team, but finally an Ohio State team that looks by their own standards kind of average. And for the first time in a long time, they don't have some version of Superman playing quarterback for them. So you're at home in South Bend and you hold Ohio State to just 2 touchdowns in the game. McCord doesn't even throw a touchdown pass in that one. They're like 8-9 deep and former 5-star recruits at wide receiver. They can barely get these guys the football. They've got the top receiver in last year's class. Brandon Inniss can't even get on the field these days is what's going on there at Ohio State. And then you've got 10 men on the field on defense for the most important final 2 plays in the game. So listen, again, I said this about Florida State earlier. You got to give credit where credit is due. You make your own luck. Good teams find ways to win. But at the same time, how do you give that game away? I've got to go with Notre Dame as a bust.
Wow. Mine comes out of the Big 12 this week because this team, they were not supposed to be great this year, but they have I'll say legendary head coach because you're going to look back and say, oh yeah, he was at the same place for a million years. That's Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State. Every 3 or 4 years, we have the same conversation of, is it time to fire Mike Gundy? His team is 2-2 with a 33-7 loss to South Alabama, and then a loss to an Iowa State team that has losses to Ohio, where they put up 10-7 to Ohio. Oklahoma State just allowed 34 points to Iowa State this week in a 34-27 loss. They don't run the ball well with Ollie Gordon. They finally decided to run it with Ollie Gordon this week, their star running back. Earlier this year, he wasn't getting carries. They couldn't figure out who the quarterback was. They finally said, you know what? We're going with Alan Bowman. That's right. Texas Tech Alan Bowman, who was so bad at football that Michigan said, hey, come be on our staff. We'll call you a player, but you're just going to sit on the bench and coach up our young guys for 2 seasons. Now he's a starting quarterback at Oklahoma State. What did he do against Iowa State? 23 for 48, 278 yards, a couple of touchdowns, a couple of interceptions. Bad is what he did. He was outshone by a kid named Rocco Becht, the Iowa State quarterback who had 350 yards and 3 touchdowns. Mike Gundy, the seat is hot. Oklahoma State is a bust. They should have been a 9-win team this season with the easiest schedule in the Big 12. Guys, we have time for uno mas boom. One more boom. Dono will take it to you.
Well, then I've got to go with Oregon. I apologize, Buffs fans, even the ones who have been fans of Colorado for more than 6 months, the 7 or 8 of you out there, I apologize. I apologize for piling on. But listen, man, Oregon goes up against the most hyped team maybe in a generation, right? When it comes to it. I know Coach Prime is he's probably rightfully trying to deflect away from his players and say, make me the target, like try not to make, which is an admirable thing that Coach Prime is doing. But his team is going to be a target all season long. For the remaining, 8, 9 teams on his schedule, they're going to treat that game like it's a national championship game. Teams will get up for that. But you know what? Oregon not only got up for it, that Dan Lanning speech before the game, and then they lived up to it with a 42-6 victory. So Oregon comes off looking great because guess what? There were a lot of eyes on that game that maybe aren't regular Pac-12 viewers. Maybe they don't usually stay up until, 1 a.m. to watch the end of an Oregon game, but they were watching that game because of how Hollywood and how hype that was, and Oregon completely dominated. So they're a boom for me.
Boom. Kenton, one more boom.
Well, I know that some Longhorn fans probably got mad at my last boom, and so I'm going to include the entire Red River rivalry in this thing. Let's get the Longhorns as my second boom. The 2 Big 12 teams headed off to the SEC, definitely my booms here. Texas has not played a single-digit game all year, and that includes playing Alabama.
Yeah.
Like that's very, very interesting because when you look at this Texas team, you say they have all the pieces, but are they mature enough to show up every week? That's the big question about this Texas team. Are they mature enough to show up? Are they experienced enough? Are the guys that they have on this roster, can they do it every week? And trusting 18 to 22-year-olds to do that, it's a tall order. That's why I'm not a betting man in general, but even if I was, I wouldn't touch college football with the next man's money. But Texas has consistently shown up and not only done what they're supposed to do, they've dominated every single week. And so, I've got to give Texas their love. They have shown up. They've shown out to be a national contender. And so I'll give them their guts when they got it. And they got a great team this year.
We're missing 2 teams here that have flown under the radar that I'll bring up in a couple of booms. Washington State being one of them. Now with this win against Oregon State, I think it's time to start talking a little bit more about how they could be a dark horse in the Pac-12. And at this point, the dark horse word is used loosely. I mean, they're a top 20 team. Cameron Ward has become one of the best quarterbacks, not just in that conference, but now in the country as America turns its eyes and says, hey, who is this Cam Ward guy? Who is this Washington State team? They've got a legitimate chance to make some waves later on this year. They're 4-0 right now. And then North Carolina, 4-0 for the first time in a couple of decades. Now, after a 41-24 win against Pitt, they have proven, hey, look, we are not to be overlooked. Drake May's a good quarterback. Mac Brown can still coach. North Carolina can make some noise in the ACC. Both those teams deserve some love as booms this week. Now, before we get into the rest of the show, we got a ton packed together. Sell Me Why is coming up with some wild spreads this week. But first, there's only one way that I get this luscious, thick toupee to grow, Dono.
And that is Nutrafol. Men, if you're tired of weakening or thinning hair and you want to reach your full hair potential, leading hair growth supplement Nutrafol helps improve your hair growth, visible thickness, and visible scalp coverage. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement, clinically shown to improve your hair growth, visible thickness, and visible scalp coverage. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements use physician-formulated, natural, science-backed ingredients. Their drug-free, patented technology provides consistent, reliable results without compromising your sexual health, by the way. So take the first step to visibly thicker, healthier hair. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month's subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com/men and enter the promo code LOCKEDONCollege. Find out why over 4,000 healthcare professionals recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com/men, that's spelled Nutrafol.com/men, and enter promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's Nutrafol.com/men, promo code LOCKEDONCollege.
You're just scrolling along on the YouTube. You see your favorite team. You see Locked On Gators is live. You click on it, and there are 3 random guys talking about college football. Well, we're not so random. That right there is Kenton Gibbs of Locked On ACC, Locked On Wolfpack. That's Alex Dono of Locked On Canes. Drake Toll here from Locked On Big 12, and this is College Football Kickoff Live. From 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., every single Friday, we are your live lunchtime listen, breaking down all the biggest stories in college football and giving you the best bets for this week in the sport. Speaking of, it is time for Sell Me Why. The Colorado Buffaloes are 3-touchdown underdogs for the second week in a row. This time, it's Lincoln Riley and the bad USC Trojan defense. Kevin Borba, Locked On Buffs, will sell us why Colorado will cover 21.5 this week.
Sell me why. My name's Kevin Borba. I'm going to tell you exactly why the Colorado Buffaloes are going to bounce back and cover against the USC Trojans this weekend at 21.5. The thing is, the Oregon defense was absolutely nails, and we learned that Oregon's defense is a legitimate top 15 defense in the country. When it comes to USC, their defense ranks number 70 in total defense, and they do not have what it takes to slow down an offense like Colorado's. And you may say, oh, USC's blown out everybody they face. Well, kind of true. They've beaten up on Mountain West teams and Pac-12 bottom feeders in their most recent matchup against Arizona State. Arizona State gave the blueprint on what it takes to not only come close to beating USC, but to move the ball whenever you darn well please. And Colorado's a much better offense than Arizona State, so they should have no issues passing it all over the yard, establishing the run, and just scoring points on this USC defense that continues to plague a program that many people think should be contending for a playoff, but is going to come up short because their defense cannot hold up against offenses like Colorado. So for that reason, Colorado's going to cover.
All right. What do you think, Don? Does Colorado, can they at least cover 21 against USC?
Hashtag I'm with Borba. This may surprise you. Okay, because I know I actually did predict Oregon to cover that gigantic spread against Colorado last week, and they did. This is a different ball game, guys. Last week they were in the Lions' Den at Oregon. This time you're at home in Colorado, the friendly confines and friendly sidelines, and I couldn't have said it better than Borba when talking about USC's defense. They can't stop a nosebleed. How are they going to stop Shedeur? A 70th ranked defense in the country. This is going to be a high-scoring football game. Now, I'm not, completely on the Buffs bandwagon to the point where I'm picking them to win the game outright. I'm not. I think USC is overall the better team, and they should be able to win this one. But they're not going to win it by 3 touchdowns. This is going to be a high-scoring game, and I think it's going to be one of those situations, Drake, where I don't know if moral victories exist for a team that got this much preseason hype, but I think this is going to be the type of game where Colorado is going to be competitive enough where people are going to come out of this one saying, you know what? Okay, the Buffs, not as bad as I thought they were against Oregon. This is a team to respect again.
Yeah, Ken, to me, you lose your best player in Colorado for at least a couple of weeks, but he was the X factor on defense more so than offense. And against this USC defense, I don't see why Colorado can't put up enough points to at least keep this game within 3 touchdowns.
So here's the thing. I said that Colorado's ceiling was about 6 wins. I'm still holding firm to that. However, covering 3 touchdowns and winning outright are 2 entirely different things.
Yeah.
I for sure have Colorado covering. And this is the reason why, if nothing else. The reality of this is all of the talk, all of the casuals, all of the people who, Deion's going to win it all. They're going to win it all this year. Those folks don't matter, but they felt like they mattered up until last game. Now Deion and his staff could truly go in. The players talked about the self-scout that they did, where they truly went in and said, hey, this is what we're good at. This is what we're bad at. This is what other teams have seen and all that. And it's hard to tell a player, hey, you need to get your fundamentals down in terms of your first step in your hand placement when you just came off one of the biggest upsets in modern sports history and a 1-win team from last year beating a playoff team from last year. It's tough to tell a kid to get that together. You know, when it's easy to tell a kid your first step has to get better when you just got your dome split in front of national TV. When another coach has talked all this high cash stuff about your team. I got to make sure we keep our clean rating here. I almost lost it. But when another coach has talked cash money about you and they backed it up, that's when you can tell a guy, you have to do the little things right. I think that Colorado will do the little things right enough to keep this game within 21. I don't think they have the horses in the stable to win, but they got enough to keep within 3 touchdowns.
Well, one game that is way less than 3 touchdowns. This one's a nail biter. Florida favored by 1.5. Billy Napier, still the head coach. They are favorites heading into Lexington, Kentucky to take on the 4-0 undefeated Kentucky Wildcats. Here's Brandon Olson of Locked On Gators to sell us why the Gators will cover 1.5.
There have been just 2 games since the Florida Gators hired Billy Napier to be their head coach in which they went in as underdogs and did not cover the spread. First one was in the Las Vegas Bowl against Oregon State last year, where Florida had a backup quarterback and many backups throughout. And the second one was week 1 of this year against the Utah Utes, where Florida did not show up to play. And granted, there was a lot of doubt coming from that. And then Florida since then has shown up when they've needed to show up. They manhandled Tennessee. There's a Florida Gators offense that the run game has been found since that Utah game, and a Kentucky defense that has 41 missed tackles so far on the season, whilst playing teams like Ball State and Akron. So Trevor Etienne and Montrell Johnson should have a lot of fun in this one. And for Florida's passing attack, you keep the ball short and you pick up yards after the catch. That's what you've been built to do, and that's what you've done. So Kentucky's defense, if they don't clean up significantly, they're going to run into some issues, and Kentucky's defense has been forcing takeaways. Florida has 1 interception on the year. That's it. And it was a ball that hit the receiver in the chest and popped up. So this is a Florida team that doesn't turn the ball over, and a Kentucky team that has needed those turnovers to walk away with victories here. It's a Mickey Mouse 4-0 Kentucky team, and the spread opened at 3.5 has been shrinking ever since. Florida might be favored by the time that we get to this game and kickoff at noon Eastern on Saturday. So I'm taking Florida, cover the spread without a doubt.
Wow. An undefeated Kentucky team against a Florida team that we've thought would fire its head coach. Kentucky just 1.5 point dogs, it seems, here now since that video is even recorded. So what do we do with this, Dono? I think I like Kentucky here, but maybe Brandon sold me.
I think I like Kentucky as well, but this is a coin flip for me. A lot of times when we do these sell me whys, I'm very firmly on one side or the other. Maybe I just want Florida to lose so we can start calling him LinkedIn Billy again or G5 Billy again. But I got to tell you, man, one of the things that I try not to do when it comes to betting on games is overreact to what happened the previous week. But, Florida, they beat the Charlotte 49ers, but they sleepwalked through that game. They only scored 1 touchdown. The rest of it was field goals against the Charlotte 49ers, who they beat 22-7. So that's not exactly a game that inspires a lot of confidence going on the road to Kentucky. So I'm trying not to overreact to that, but at the same time, it's basically a pick'em game. Like Brandon mentioned, the number has been shrinking. I'd probably bet Kentucky money line in this game is probably the way that I'd go. So he didn't quite sell me, but he gave a valiant attempt.
Brandon, who is also the producer of Locked On College Football Kickoff Live, and can mute any of our mics at any second. Kenton Gibbs, be careful, Kentucky or Florida?
Drake, I want to ask you a question, okay? I want to make sure that there's more than just a beautiful head of hair there, that you're more than just the sex appeal of this show. Now, tell me this, Drake. Where did Devin Leary last play quarterback?
Last week for the Kentucky Wildcats. Is that what you're looking for?
What school was he at before Kentucky?
NC State.
He was at NC State. I watched the young man up close. I watched him, interviewed him, did all the good stuff, and I told myself I'm going to remove my feelings from watching him play and from any picks that I make involving him this year, even though he's gone. And we love him. We care about him dearly. We wish him the best. And I said I was going to get my feelings out of it. However, just like his Heisman campaign started off at NC State, I'm going to start it off this segment the exact same way. Devin Leary delivers. Folks, I'm sorry to tell you, Linked on Billy is going to be back. LinkedIn Billy is right around the corner. Okay, they say scared money don't make no money. Well, thank God that young man ain't in Atlantic City, because how would he get back to Gainesville with no?
There it is. They muted him. Genius.
Wow. Listen, I'm always gonna tell the truth, even if it gets me muted. Okay, the fact of the matter is simple. The Florida Gators have shown us. At times, they can be really good. At times, they can be really mid. At times, they can be really bad. For all that we say about this Kentucky team, that it is a Mickey Mouse 4-0. Let's make no bones about that, right? They have played the Island of Misfit Toys University 3 times in a row already. Sure. But with that being said, I at least trust them because they've been consistent in beating those bad teams, as opposed to Florida, who Biff Pogge's a really good coach at Charlotte. They don't have more than 3 players that will be starting on the Power 5 team today. They just don't.
Wow.
I'm sorry to say that. So the fact that they held you to nothing but field goal, don't worry about it. The big blue wall is coming. Devin Leary delivers. Give me Kentucky clearing the spread here.
See, here, my pushback a bit on the Devin Leary thing. You say, where did he play last? And it was last week against Vanderbilt for Kentucky. I mean, I think this is a different Devin Leary. He was 15 for 29 against Vanderbilt, had 205 yards, 2 interceptions to 1 touchdown. He doesn't look like the Devin Leary that we saw at NC State, the Heisman hopeful Devin Leary at times at NC State. He looks like a Kentucky Devin Leary. And so also that being against Vanderbilt, Akron, Eastern Kentucky, and Ball State. And his stats still won't jump off the page. This is where he should already have 1,400 passing yards and 15 touchdowns and be right there in the thick of that conversation. But he's not. So I don't know if I put this game squarely on Devin Leary, but I do think Kentucky gets it done. Their running game, but with Ray Davis where he is, their running game is solid. I think if Kentucky can establish the run against a Florida defense that struggled against Utah in the trenches, that's where Kentucky can win this game. I'm not sold on Florida winning, but can I be sold on Alabama as 14.5-point favorites? That is the line right now between Bama and Mississippi State. Jimmy Stein from Locked On Bama will sell us why the Tide will cover.
This is Jimmy Stein from Locked On Bama. This is why I think Alabama's going to cover that 15.5 number in Starkville against Mississippi State on Saturday night. Mississippi State struggled a little bit on offense as they're transitioning from the air raid offense to something a little more pro style against LSU just 2 weeks ago against a team that's similar in talent to Alabama. They reached just, I think, 200 total yards, 14 points. I think State might find the sledding even tougher against an Alabama defense that's looking better and better every week. Maybe a little bit of the Alabama defense of old. If they could only muster about 200 yards and 14 points against LSU, I wouldn't suspect Mississippi State would do much better against Alabama on Saturday. So I expect to see Mississippi State struggle to score and Alabama to score right around its average, right around 30 points.
Yeah, Stein's been using some Nutrafol, and that accent is legendary, by the way. Alabama, 14.5, Mississippi State. Donna, what do you think?
I think Alabama covers. I think they're riding the ship to a point. I don't think this is a national championship Alabama team, but I think they're going to be formidable, probably a 10-11 win team by the time it's all said and done. I think they showed us last week they're starting to get things figured out. And, yeah, I think Alabama's going to win and roll.
Kenton Gibbs.
Roll Tide, roll. I mean, I agree with Dono. This is a team that has figured out who they are, and they're doing what they want to do now. Or not what they want to do, but what they have to do now, right? Yeah. Like, this is a team that realized, hey, we had Bryce Young, we had Tua, we had Jalen Hurts, we had a great run of quarterbacks where we could pitch it all around the yard to all those great receivers and all that. This is going to be a ground and pound, physical, include our quarterback in the running game team. And that's what we're going to have to do. And they've accepted that, I believe. And not only the acceptance of that, and their identity, it's the lack of identity for Mississippi State because they're at that crossroads. They're at those, if they were a person, they'd be in those weird teenage years where it's like, you don't know what crowds you're going to run with. You don't really have your niche yet. You don't really, you're not one of those kids that's like, I'm a robot for JROTC, or I love football, or I love band. They're the kid that's like, I really don't know. I'm a BC average kid. I just hang out with everybody sometimes. I'm not sure what my niche is. That's where Mississippi State is. And you can't have that with a deficiency of talent in comparison to your opponent and expect me to not believe that opponent is going to impose their will on you.
Well, the head coach of the school died in the offseason. I mean, you talk about, that within itself puts you in the limbo period of, okay, you're already the awkward teenager trying to figure it out. You lose a parent. Now your entire world, like, where does this program go from here without Mike Leach? I don't know if we've talked about that enough because it happened in December. So it was December, January. So it was here, square start of the offseason, Mississippi State has some time to recover. No, he's the guy that recruited these players here, that coached these kids up. That's a tough thing to come back from. At the same time, I think because what you're saying is that Alabama's figured it out. I don't agree yet. Not yet. I haven't seen it yet because remember, they didn't figure it out 2 weeks ago against South Florida. We can say they figured it out against Ole Miss, especially defensively. I still need to see more from the offense. You've mentioned the more ground and pound, more run the ball with or without the quarterback. That's why I think this game does stay at least somewhat close. This is a 27-14 final score. Alabama wins. It's on the road at Mississippi State. Give me Mississippi State to cover 14.5. But maybe the biggest sell me why this week, Duke and Notre Dame. We've already seen the seen the Blue Devils beat Clemson. Now this week they're 6-point underdogs against Notre Dame. Let's be joined by JJ Jackson from Locked On Blue Devils to tell us why. JJ Jackson, Locked On Blue Devils here on Locked On College Football Kickoff Live. JJ, you got a touchdown-ish underdog this week in the Blue Devils. Can you sell us why, please?
I'd be more than happy to. Really excited for Duke football to finally be on this stage for the first time since 1994. Duke is hosting a ranked opponent as a ranked football team themselves. I mean, this is just unprecedented territory for this Duke program, celebrating that for the first time ever, Duke is hosting College Game Day on Saturday. And yet Mike Elko is not wanting any congratulations over that. He'd much rather get a congratulations over picking up a win against the Fighting Irish. Duke has won all 4 of their football games this season by at least 21 points, including a primetime Labor Day night win over Clemson. They've been on this stage before. The defense has delivered, giving up 7 points in 3 of the 4 games so far this season. And they've got one of the top names at quarterback that the sport has this season in Riley Leonard. A touchdown underdog, I'm all for it. I think Duke absolutely can once again shock the football world and continue this sort of love affair that we're having with the Duke football program.
Yeah, Kenton, you come from Locked On ACC. Are you sold here?
Oh, absolutely. And let me tell you why. First time since 94, I'm bald and I wasn't even born yet. Let's take that into consideration for a second. But no, very seriously, Notre Dame's offense showed me nothing, less than nothing last week. Less than nothing. And I talked about the NC State defense and the problems that they had, because a lot of people say, well, Notre Dame put up 45 on a really good NC State defense. If you look at many of the plays that happened, the first play out of a weather delay, they give up an 80-yard run. Well, nobody gets big runs against NC State. Not so fast, my friend. Rosas of Connecticut got a 71-yarder against them in week 1. Now, I'm sorry to tell you this. That is not the same defense that we saw from NC State in years past. But now back to Duke. This is a fun fact for you, since he dropped the 94 fun fact on us. Does anybody know how many times a offense has driven the length of the field in terms of from their minus territory or further on Duke this season, their first string defense? Anybody guess how many times they scored a touchdown in that? JJ, do you know?
It hasn't been that many. I'm
Zero.
Yeah.
Zero.
That's crazy.
Nobody's done
That's
it
crazy.
yet. Not a single team. The only touchdowns they've given up have either been by their backups or it's been a team that has started in plus territory for some reason, be it off a muff punt or a great return themselves. This defense is so for real. They are so for real. And Notre Dame gave everything they had. They left it all on the field and left one guy on the sideline those last 2 plays. But they left it all on the field last week to come out of South Bend with a win. And they're walking into a Duke team that was they were chilling back, maxing and relaxing, all cool by the second half of last week. So I think that Duke has a situation where Notre Dame's strength is running the ball. Duke's strength is Dwayne Carter in that front. They get after you. They're physical. They stop the run. They have some fun. Duke is at least going to cover.
Yeah, Dono, do you agree?
Well, let me add some historical context to this. I'm not sure, but I don't know how much history really means in a sport where the rosters get completely overturned every 4 to 5 years. And, it's not Marcus Freeman has only been the head coach for a couple seasons now. But, this Notre Dame, they don't want to be a full football member of the ACC for, whatever financial reasons. But maybe they should have been, because they probably would have won a few ACC titles. They have that partnership with the ACC where they play 5 opponents per year. The last time Notre Dame lost a regular season game to an ACC opponent was Miami in 2017. They have run through ACC opponents like a hot knife through butter. I just want to add that context. I don't know if that means anything in this matchup, but I do. The reason why I'm scared to be sold on what JJ is saying is because of Notre Dame's defense. So, JJ, I'd like to ask you, because I am a believer in Riley Leonard. I saw him carve up my Hurricanes last season. I know this guy is the real deal. But how do you see specifically the passing offense for Duke matching up with Notre Dame's passing D?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of been the question through 4 games this season for Duke, which many people wouldn't expect. Like, right, the preseason conversation is we know exactly what we're getting out of Riley Leonard at that quarterback spot. What does the backfield look like? Duke's all-time single-season rusher, Mateo Durant, from a couple of seasons ago, is not in the backfield anymore. It's been more of a by-committee approach, and so others are having to step up out of that backfield. You feel confident about the passing game, and they really haven't had to throw the football just yet. So with that being said, the fact that Leonard is, a Heisman contender going into the season and has so many weapons, whether it be Jordan Moore or Jalen Calhoun, who's made plays, Nicky Dalmala in the vertical game in the tight end room. Like, I think absolutely Duke's passing attack will be more on display than it has been so far this season, because for the most part, it's just been ground and pound because that's all they've had to do. That's wild to say that is all Duke has had to do so far this season, is hand the ball off. And by the way, Riley Leonard can move a little bit himself. He's the second leading rusher on this football team too.
JJ, we got a comment in here from a guy named Immaculate, who was on one of the biggest hits in Locked On College football or Locked On College history this week, talking expansion. One of the great experts in college ball says that Duke has to be a top 10 team if they beat Notre Dame this week. Do you agree? Does Duke get into the 9 or 10 spot? Can they jump a few teams?
Absolutely. I mean, with the win that they would have against Notre Dame, and considering how well they've played so far this season, I think Duke absolutely deserves to be in that conversation. I think you would then start to talk more about the games that Duke has played previously, that their defense has been so stout. Again, only 35 combined points given up in the 4 games so far, that the offense has taken care of the football, that they've got a win against Clemson. They've now got this win against Notre Dame on their schedule with the full ACC kind of conference play ahead of them. Yeah, hey, here we are thinking about college basketball rankings coming out soon in Durham. Let's talk about this Duke football team with a win, possibly being one of those top 10 teams in the entire country in football.
Is it a football school now, JJ?
Making plenty of arguments for it to be. That's right. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's JJ Jackson of Locked On Blue Devils. JJ, thanks for joining Locked On College Football Kickoff Live.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks.
We are rolling along and headed towards our Conference Confidential Part 2. But first, Dono.
Guys, eBay Motors, passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts to fit your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebay.com/motors. eBay Guaranteed Fit, available only to U.S. customers, eligible items only, and exclusions apply.
All right, guys, Conference Confidential Part 2 this week. Let's see what the rest of the country is up to after we checked in on some of the other big leagues earlier. Here in Part 2, we're going to pitch it to Q Drake. He teleports from the screen. Oh my gosh. I didn't think that would actually work. Wow. Oh, huge week in the Big 12. Obviously, Texas and Kansas, one of our favorite rivalries in college football, is this week. And give me the Jayhawks plus 17 and a half some places. If you don't like the Kansas Jayhawks plus 17 and a half, you hate America. It's horns down this week. Kansas is not going to beat Texas at DKR, but at 2:30 on ABC, they're at least going to play it close. Houston and Texas Tech. Talk about a snoozer. Would rather watch a paint drying competition. Love both these teams with all my heart. Give me a team to win that game. Baylor, UCF. UCF favored by 12. I'll be in the house for this one. The Baylor Bears get smoked, which is just what happens to them. Gus Malzahn rolls over Baylor. Final score, as many points as UCF wants to score against Baylor, who has less. Iowa State, Oklahoma. 20-point line for OU. I'm seeing a lot of metrics here of Iowa State losing this game by 10. 13. Iowa State plus 20, my entire mortgage. Guess what? I don't have one. I'm 22. I still like Iowa State to make this game competitive. Their defense is that good. The offense exists. They have the ball sometimes, but the defense is good. Oklahoma's offense is not great. They showed that against Cincinnati, only scoring 20 points. If Cincinnati can cover 14.5, Iowa State can cover this week. West Virginia, TCU, Nico Marchiol. You don't know who that is, do you? Garrett Green. Probably don't know who that is. CJ Donaldson. Learn the name. West Virginia running back. He rumbles. He stumbles. TCU 12.5 point favorites. I'm not buying it. I love the dogs this week. Maybe my favorite dog, though, a team that beat an SEC team on the road. They played tonight, Friday night. They beat an SEC team on the road in Arkansas. Now they are 2-point dogs at home against Cincinnati. 2-2 Cincinnati with a loss to Miami of Ohio. BYU, money line at home. Give me the Cougs. That's all the stuff from the Big 12 this week.
Our SEC Week 5 picks. We got 7 games of the conference. SEC on SEC. First up, I like Kentucky at home against Florida. I think Devin Leary gets it done despite the turnovers. Florida much improved, but the Wildcats better this week. I like Arkansas in a bounce-back game against A&M in Dallas, taking on the backup quarterback of Max Johnson. KJ Jefferson makes the plays. I like Georgia to win on the road at Auburn. Carson Beck's first true road test, but Georgia wins big. I like Mizzou to roll Vandy and improve to a perfect 5-0. I like Tennessee at home against South Carolina, but maybe take the Gamecocks to cover that plus 12 line. I like Bama to roll Mississippi State and Starkville late night Saturday. Jalen Milroe doesn't do much, but the Bama defense gets the job done. And I like LSU to pull out a close one over Ole Miss in Oxford, minus the 2.5 for LSU. But LSU keeps getting it done. They keep on rolling. That's our SEC Week 5 picks. We'll see how right we are coming up next week.
I'm Darian Gray of Locked On HBCU, and I have 2 games for you again this week that you need to look out for. One from the MEAC and one from the SWAC. So in the MEAC, you have North Carolina Central, who's going over to face Campbell from the Colonial Athletic Association. And last year, when these 2 teams faced off, it wasn't pretty for the Eagles. North Carolina Central got beat down badly. So to me, this year is all about getting the lick back. It's all about revenge. It's all about making up for it, because last year they halted a lot of momentum from public perception wise, but they halted a lot of momentum for the North Carolina Central Eagles. This year, they have all the momentum already. They're the defending Black college football national champions. You can't let that happen to you again. Not the way that it happened in 2022. Now you look over to the other side in the SWAC, and I'm looking for the showdown between Prairie View A&M and Grambling, because this is a State Fair Classic. It's going to be in Dallas, Texas. It's a great event. But beyond that, these are the 2 teams in the SWAC West that are trending upward, and now they get to face off against each other. One could even argue that this is SWAC West supremacy on the line. I'm excited to see the quarterbacks of Trayvon Conley and Miles Crawley go against each other. Both teams have really good running back duos. Those 2 are going to go against each other. We'll see if Graham is able to air out a defensive secondary that PV says needs to improve. Meanwhile, PV is a team that you can never count out, and we'll see if Grambling can put them away at any moment if given the chance. This will be a very exciting football game. You have North Carolina Central versus Campbell, and you also have Prairie View A&M versus Grambling. To see the outcome and hear breakdowns of these 2 games, you can check me out on Locked On HBCU every single day, Monday through Friday. And you can also follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives.
That was part 2 of Conference Confidentials. We've taken you all around America this week. Guys, we've done it every week to this point. It had plenty of names in there on our LinkedIn. Who needs to improve their LinkedIn, brush up on their LinkedIn, and update that page? That is coming up next. But first, Dono.
Well, my friends, did you know 80% of men will experience hair thinning in their lifetime? It's normal, but it doesn't have to be your fate, because you can get ahead of that thinning hair with Nutrafol. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements use physician-formulated, natural, science-backed ingredients. Their drug-free, patented technology provides consistent, reliable results without compromising your sexual health. Nutrafol supports healthy hair growth from within by targeting root causes of thinning, such as stress, hormones, environment, nutrition, lifestyle, and metabolism through whole-body health. Take the first step into visibly thicker, healthier hair. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month's subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com/men and enter the promo code LOCKEDONCollege. Find out why over 4,000 healthcare professionals recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com/men. That's spelled Nutrafol.com/men, and then enter promo code LockedOnCollege. That's Nutrafol.com/men, promo code LockedOnCollege.
All right, guys. Who needs to update the LinkedIn today? By the way, this segment brought to you by both LinkedIn and Butch Jones, who has been a consistent contender, who got a win this week, an upset win against Southern Mississippi. Congrats to you and yours, Butch. Kenton Gibbs, who is on your list this week that will likely lose their job?
I'm so glad you started with me. I'm so elated that you started with me. You had to know that the ACC has two teams that are coming off of just god-awful losses, that both of these coaches, you know what? I'm going to tell you this. I might head up to Boston. I know I said I was going to be at the Duke and Notre Dame.
You really don't like Jeff Hafley.
But I might. Oh, no. It's not just about Jeff Hafley. It's not just about Jeff Hafley. Because Jeff Hafley, that team got blown out the water so bad. Louisville called the dogs off in the second quarter. I don't think people realize Brown was like, all right, that's enough in the second quarter in a conference game. But Tony Bennett, come on to the floor, brother. You know, Tony Bennett had that game won against NC State. You talk about snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, a game in which NC State was mightily favored.
And Tony Elliott.
Yeah, Tony Elliott. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Who did I say?
The other Tony is safe for now.
Who did I say?
You said Tony Bennett.
I'm sorry. Yes, Tony Elliott. Virginia, all the Tonys. They got two Tony quarterbacks, Tony Elliott, Tony Bennett. More Tony Awards than all of the actors on Broadway could bring home. But now, very seriously, in terms of Tony Elliott, this is a team that, you tie up the game, right? You get down there, you're a field goal, you're an extra point away. What does your guard do? He headbutts a linebacker after the play to send your conversion back to the 18-yard line. But wait, there's more. I feel like Billy Mays because there's going to be a lot of, but wait, there's more here. So the next thing that happens, you convert the extra point from the 18. NC State pissing down their leg. Their pants are soaking wet and smelling like the freshest of urine. You are about to get yourself a win here. You're going to do it. You're going to go to overtime and win. What does your quarterback do? He does a freshman thing because he's a freshman. Takes off his helmet and hits a Paul Bunyan-like pose and gets a 15-yard penalty against one of the best kick returners in the nation in Jonathan Gray. And what ends up happening? Jonathan Gray gets a great return that puts NC State in a position where all they needed was one first down to be in field goal position. But wait, there's more. NC State kicks the first field goal, and what happens? UVA has a guy jump over the long snapper, which we all know is illegal, so they get another shot at it where they move even closer. Both of these coaches. I'm going to go up there to Boston because, like I said, anybody who knows me, I've talked about this before. I'm a recruiter outside of this show. I'm a headhunter. That's what I do. I help companies build out. And I'm going to help these two. I'm going to help both of them. I can knock out two birds with one stone and get my coach's resume gig started because I'm telling you, with all the buyouts that they're going to be getting, I don't need a big percentage of buy. Just give me a small little 5% fee. Give me a little 5% fee, and we'll work that thing out. Because both of these coaches, the block is hot. The block is hot.
Kenton Gibbs taking out one of the Tonys and Jeff Hafley as usual. That Jeff Hafley guy has become a weekly staple. Alex Dono, who is on the hot seat.
I love how Kenton, Tony Bennett is catching strays there. Any Tony in Virginia is in big trouble. But I'm going to stick with the ACC because someone that Kenton gave kind of a break to was Brent Pry at Virginia Tech. I mean, I hope he's warming up that LinkedIn profile. They're 1-3 now. They lost 24-17 at Marshall, and that vaunted Virginia Tech offense has been held to 70 points or 17. 70 would not be so bad.
Right. Shocking.
They've been held to 17 or less points in 3 consecutive L's. And so, folks, Kenton has already brought up Hafley enough, but I will say that circle the date November 11th on your calendar because that's when Brent Pry and Jeff Hafley go head-to-head for an ACC matchup. So I'm going to say this. Assuming both of those coaches are still gainfully employed for that matchup on November 11th, we might have a good old-fashioned loser leaves town match, right? The loser of that game may not survive
Got to go
the following week, or definitely not into the season. So, it brings up like old WWF imagery. I was before Drake's time a little bit.
No idea what that means. Yeah.
To have those loser leave town matches, that might be what you see on November 11th.
Yeah. Guys, I have just been given, the hotel staff has been so gracious to have slipped this under the door. Looks like Dave Aranda on the hot seat. What? You win the Sugar Bowl in the Big 12 championship. Then last week against Texas, granted a good Texas team, but usually when a team loses, you say, oh, they lost the number 3 team in the country, right? They were supposed to lose. When a team makes it into the red zone 6 times and scores 6 points, that is almost hard to do. That is challenging to pull off, but it's what the Baylor Bears did against the Texas Longhorns. You can say this number 3 team in the country. That's true. Texas tried at times to lose the game. They tried to put Baylor in the game by gifting the Bears 6 red zone trips, and Baylor put up 6 points in a 38-6 loss. It was one of the best crowds I've ever seen at McLean Stadium in Waco. And what did Baylor do? The football team crapped all over it. Dave Aranda has lost control of the fan base, which is an easy thing to do. Coaches do that all the time, right? And they can win them back over. The locker room still seems to be intact for now, but that one is slowly sinking. In some of the big metric national, hot seat posts, he's in the top 5 at this point. Too much money for him to go this year, but he is brushing up on the LinkedIn because I just, there comes a point where you're losing a lot of games. The team, the atmosphere, everything around it crumbles, and you can't revive it. So it's make or break for Aranda, especially this weekend against Central Florida, where I'll be in Orlando on Saturday. Guys, there are some huge games on the docket tonight, even between BYU and Cincinnati as the Cougars. I'll be on hand as the Cougars open Big 12 play, home Big 12 play, and then obviously Oregon State and Utah. We'll get into all that, do our pick'em coming up later. But first, it's maybe the weirdest segment of the week where I show my love to our grand poobah of college football. He is the president of the Locked On College side of the network. This is the Blackerby Blitz. It is the Blackerby Blitz. That is the president of the Locked On College football realm, Zach Blackerby. I am Drake Toll, just here so I don't get fired. Thanks, boss, for joining the show today.
Of course.
As we blitz through some of these big headlines, I keep coming back to this Colorado deal. This one may be my favorite weird one, though. Remember that a couple of weeks ago, Deion Sanders talked about how this is just football, things happen. Well, the kid, Blackburn, who hit Travis Hunter, took him bowling this week. And I think that's weird, Zach.
I think it's weird too, but we've seen this all the time. We've seen dudes get into fights, right? And then they become best friends for the rest of their lives. Maybe that's what happened. Also, Blackburn, maybe he doesn't want to become, I'm just the guy who hit Travis Hunter. Maybe this is a strategic play on his part.
Yeah, he's still just the guy who hit Travis Hunter, by the way. Speaking of people who got hit, the Deion Sanders entire football team talking trash pregame. Oregon publishes a lot of what they said in their cinematic recap of the win over Colorado. Colorado got thumped. Is this the end of the Deion Sanders era?
Well, first off, incredible troll job by Oregon. Totally savage. It's like, we're catching all of this. We have all the receipts, and then we showed everyone the receipts shortly after the game was over. Incredible, like caught in 4K type stuff for the Colorado Buffs. I don't think it's over. I do think it's kind of what we thought it would be, though, Drake. This is a Pac-12 conference that, though it's about to fall apart and crumble, it's going out with a bang. And their schedule's not going to get any easier. So I think a lot of people are going to hop off, especially after the next few weeks if they pick up a few more losses. But to me, Colorado has already overachieved this season. I think Deion has already kind of done enough of the proof of concept. He's able to go to guys and say, I need offensive linemen, I need defensive linemen, I need help. But we're close. We're a lot closer than we used to be. And so I don't know. I mean, they may be a bad football team, but I think they're better than what we thought they were going into the year.
Michigan State has now officially fired Mel Tucker, proving to people everywhere don't have non-consensual phone sex, especially with someone who is a sexual assault survivor advocate who you've invited to your university multiple times. This dumpster fire finally has a bow on it. Mel Tucker is gone.
Yeah, I got the notification from several apps saying Mel Tucker now fired. And I'm like, oh, I guess, yeah, that technically hasn't happened yet, but I'm kind of done talking about it. Drake, Mel Tucker, get out of here. Your coaching career is probably over.
He is done. I don't know. There are some different therapy programs, different therapy college football programs that hire the like. We'll see if he makes a return at one of those.
Oh yeah, maybe he's a grad assistant in Alabama in 2 years.
Yes, maybe he is, where he's already been. The playoff committee met this week and said, you know what? Nah, for now, let's stick with 12. What do you think about that?
I think 12 is a good number. I'm still a fan of staying at 4. I know a lot of people are against that, and 12 means more college football, which is certainly a good thing. But I think regardless of what we do, it's going to water down what it means to be a playoff team. Yeah. And right now, I think we've already kind of had to do that with several seasons. It's like, okay, there's 2 or 3 teams that are worthy of a playoff team. And then the 4th team, it's like, okay, who do we want to just invite to the party? When you go to 12, I mean, I think it's really going to zoom out. I mean, because parity is a thing in pro sports. It is not a thing in college football, nor does it need to be. And I just think when you bring in 12 teams, I don't know if that's necessarily good for the sport, but it may be good for the fan, and that's all that matters.
Two sides to this. One, parity in college football does not result in viewership. The Big 12 is a great example. There's no big dog. There's no national championship contender in the new Big 12, which means that there aren't 10 million eyeballs that are zooming in on somebody. Maybe Deion Sanders just because of the Deion experience.
Yeah.
On the flip side, 12 means $320 million per conference from ESPN, which right now is 5 conferences. Zach, technically with a grace period, Washington State and Oregon State are still in the Pac-12 for a couple of years. They could walk into $160 million each if ESPN doesn't move them elsewhere.
Man, just keep showing up, Washington State and Oregon State. I mean, what a gift. What a gift from ESPN if that were to all happen. But they got to figure something out. And, you know, we saw a few reports. You and I texted about it. They're going to try to operate as a 2-team conference. That was one of the things that they discussed. And it's like, no, that's not a conference. I hate to break it to you. That's not a conference. Those are 2 teams that are about to become trust fund babies. And look, I'm not gonna fault you for it, but I am going to be a little jealous.
You know, Zach, the Auburn Tigers lost to a team that could probably win the national championship in Texas A&M. You know, you're going to lose to some really good teams out there. Just felt like this Auburn team still has 11-1 prowess.
You said it, not me, but I do think they lose this weekend. So maybe 10-2 is still on the table for the Tigers.
And yes, my one Auburn question for the week. Ole Miss this week, I found it really heartfelt that they are celebrating their 2003 national championship team. They won the championship, right?
They're honoring their 2003 team against LSU, and they won exactly nothing. They didn't win the West. They didn't win the conference.
No.
But they had Eli Manning on that team. Ole Miss, what are you doing? What are you doing? It's just Ole Miss cannot get out of its own way. It's crazy. I don't get it. They're trying to act like there's something they're not. So like, all right, Eli Manning, are you free this weekend? No. Okay. What about next weekend? No. What about okay. All right. You can come here. All right. 2003 team. Let's party it up. Get out of here. It doesn't make any sense.
Just bring the whole 2000. You know, the 98 Purdue team. I hear we could bring them back and have a little soiree with those guys too. I just hang the banner, I guess. You know, hang the banner.
Love celebrating things that didn't actually matter. I mean, incredible.
Maybe the biggest story in college football this week, Zach. Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift are dating. He played college football, and it's all that I've seen all week long. I know that you, a big Swiftie, are super excited about this.
I wouldn't say I'm a huge Swiftie, but I definitely don't mind her music. I think I like her older stuff more than her newer stuff. Older stuff's a little more poppy, which is more in my lane. But Happy for him. I'm just glad that Travis Kelce put her on the map.
Yeah. Finally, people are talking about Taylor Swift. She's become a little more mainstream. We're going to get taken off the air, by the way. That is Zach Blackerby of the Locked On Auburn podcast.
That's
I'm
right.
Drake Toll. Thanks for doing the Zach Blackerby, the Blackerby Blitz. You know,
Yeah.
This is my favorite part of my week.
Hey, love you a long time, bud.
I love you more, Dad. This is Locked On College Football Kickoff Live. That was the Blackerby Blitz.
Can I say something? For the last hour and 40 minutes, I was wondering if there's any possible way on a college football breakdown show, if we could find a way to work Travis Kelce dating Taylor Swift into the show. And Drake told you found a way to do it by pointing out that, yeah, at some point, Travis Kelce played college. I don't even remember where he played college football.
Cincinnati with his brother. How
Sorry.
did you forget that?
I mean, I'm letting him carry my fantasy team. He's a chief to me. All right.
He was a smash then. He's a smash. He's a smash with Taylor Swift. It's good, man.
I check the hard drives. This is getting crazy.
Amazing.
Okay? This is getting crazy. But yeah, there are a lot of interesting angles too. A lot of that whole Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce thing. For example, is she going to go back to Cincinnati one of these games with him? If I'm just saying, him and his brother are both going to be inducted in that Ring of Honor if they aren't already there soon.
Yeah.
But we get a Swift appearance.
Think about Colorado, Cincinnati, a conference game next year. Deion, Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce. Bro, what's ESPN's going to lose it?
Would that be the first time Deion wouldn't be the biggest star at his own game?
That would be more star power than the Milky Way can contain. Do you understand?
Insane.
That is just too much.
All the social media posts from every major media outlet, not ours, thankfully, have just only been Deion and Taylor Swift for 2 weeks now, or weeks on weeks. Guys, let's go into some best bets this week. We'll do a couple of minutes of your very favorite games and then wrap up this show today with straight up picks of the biggest contests in college football this week. Starting in the Big 12, when you think best bets, guys, tonight, BYU opened as a 3-point favorite. They are now 1.5-point underdogs against Cincinnati. The game has moved from even to swaying in both teams' favor. I think BYU wins outright in a home night game. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is having its biggest conference of the year in Salt Lake City this weekend. So what does that mean? Everybody and their mom is in Provo, Utah, myself included, for the game. Myself included for the game. And this place is going to be packed, raucous. I think BYU wins it at home pretty easily.
Yeah, from what I've been told about BYU's home atmosphere, it's not only like loud and raucous, it's also terrifying. Because
it is.
Yeah.
They're like deadly, like silent originally, and it like scares a lot of people, which it would terrify me too.
They bring out Polynesian fire dancers and Cosmo the Cougar.
Yeah. So with that being said, I know we talked about this. This Cincinnati team flying under the radar a bit and all that. But if we're talking about best bets here, and the bet has BYU as the underdog, if I have that correct, right?
Yeah.
So if Cincinnati wins this game by 1 point, does BYU cover?
BYU covers as of last check at a FanDuel. Yeah, it was 1.5 in favor of Cincinnati.
Yeah, I think Keaton Slovis shows us why he's Keaton Slovis and not that's Keaton Slovis that's Keaton Slovis way late in this game. And I think that Cincinnati escapes by the hairs on their chin out of Utah with the win here.
Wow. Now, Donna, what's your you got any best bets in college football this week?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I tipped my hand to this one earlier, but if anyone's tuning in late, I feel pretty strongly about Colorado covering plus 21.5 against USC. I think that line is very reactionary to what everyone saw happen to Colorado on the road against Oregon. This time around, they're at home. Is USC the better team? Absolutely, but they don't really have a defense, guys, and Colorado is going to score. I think I see USC winning this game by 10, 13 points, not really much more than that. So plus 21.5. Again, I think that was an overreaction to what happened last week. In fact, if you go with the sharps, right? And I don't care what percentage of bets have been coming in on USC, because a higher percentage of bets have come in on them. A higher percentage of the money is coming in on Colorado, because they were 24.5-point underdogs when the line opened. That has shrunk by 3 points. I'm still comfortable taking Colorado at plus 21.5.
Yeah. Kenton, best bets tonight, tomorrow, whatever?
You know, I hate to say this, and I hate to do this to my boys, but I got to do it. I bet with NC State once, and they let me down. They disappointed me. They had me sitting here saying, how under God's green earth did this happen, in terms of playing Virginia, a team that's dead last in the conference in both offense and defense, into a game where Virginia should have very well won it. And with that being said, I believe the line opened for this Friday Night Lights blackout at, I want to say, 6.5 or 7 points. I think Louisville takes care of that comfortably. Their offense is, to say they're explosive, I'm talking they're you just had Chipotle and Taco Bell and Little Caesars in the same day type of explosive. I mean, it's going to be a great sight in terms of, if you give Johar Jordan a crease, he's gone. Bye. See you later, brother. More power to you. Go bang your head on the goalpost. Jamari Thrash is a touchdown machine out wide. The only chance that NC State has to not allow Louisville to cover is if they absolutely decimate Jake Plummer, which is something that I'm not sure that they can do. There's a world, or not sure that they will do. They can do it if they're firing at their highest clip, but I'm not sure that they will.
Yeah. Guys, looking around college football, James Madison -3 at home against South Alabama. I love that being a lock of the week. Syracuse plus a touchdown at home against Clemson. Give me the orange. I think they at least keep that game within a score. Around the Big 12, too, I love West Virginia covering 14 against a TCU team that's good, but West Virginia's running game and defense are both so solid. TCU wins 20-14. West Virginia certainly covers 14 points. Iowa State, Oklahoma. I actually have Iowa State plus 21 at OU because of that defense that Matt Campbell has put together and the offensive explosion they had last week. Then UCF, who hosts Baylor this week, they're 11.5-point favorites. That line keeps moving in favor of Baylor, which I think is a mistake. I've got UCF winning that game by 13 points or more. 13 is the minimum for UCF. They cover 11.5. Give me UCF over Baylor. Now, guys, any more big picks before we get into the straight ups on the biggest
Let me
game?
say this. This is a pretty big number, but I don't know if I can see Nebraska even being within 17 points against Michigan. I don't know what I'm missing here. I mean, to me, Michigan, I look at them as a bona fide college football playoff championship contender, and Nebraska is still Nebraska. Even if they made a positive coaching change, I think it's going to take Matt Rule a little bit more time to make that program respectable. I think Michigan, who's only giving 17.5 points, is going to win that game by 3 or more touchdowns.
Kenton?
Yeah, I don't have any more. I'm not much of a betting guy, so I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I've been following the lines and tracking them closely. I make sure that I keep 1 or 2 in the tuck just because I know Drake's going to call on me. And, you know, you got to have an answer when the teacher wants to call on you during popcorn reading. But I'm not the betting guy. I'll leave that to the Italian ad guy over there.
Somebody called me in the chat. I love it. I'm even wearing the old school Italian hat today. Full blown.
He is for sure going to make us an offer we cannot refuse on these bets today.
Right.
Well, hopefully Dono and I can win you some money. And guys, let's get into the straight up picks this week. It is a noon kickoff in the Big Ten. Penn State is at Northwestern. Northwestern just beat Minnesota. Is there any way the Wildcats get an upset? Dono, who wins?
Maybe if they get a miracle, they can get an upset. But no, the Penn State Nittany Lions, they're winning. And for what it's worth, I know this isn't a betting segment anymore. I also think they're covering. I am bullish on Penn State.
Kenton Gibbs?
Penn State whoops the claws off the Cats. This is not going to be a good game by any stretch of the imagination. This is you talk about the loss of a coach coming and how that disrupts a program. If you look at the circumstances and the timing under which Pat Fitzgerald was dismissed, there's a reason that this team is as bad as they are. With all due respect, PJ Fleck, you losing that game is more of a reflection on you than it is a positive on Northwestern. Penn State and James Franklin whooped the wheels off them.
It's Penn State for sure. This one though, USC Colorado, gets a bit more interesting. See, USC has yet to play a legitimate opponent. They've beaten Arizona State, Stanford, Nevada, and San Jose State, whereas Colorado has big wins over Nebraska and a close win against TCU on the road. The Buffs, give me Colorado in a noontime upset over USC this week. And Dono, it looks like you're not going to agree.
No, listen, I thought I was going to be the one who said the nicest thing about Colorado today because I'm pretty confident they cover, but no, they don't win. This is going to be a good old-fashioned shootout. Give me the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. Give me Lincoln Riley. Give me that offense. I just think USC are the better team. I don't think they're going to win it as comfortably as a lot of folks think. And because, again, noon kickoff on the road for a team that's going to feel like 9 a.m. for them, but they still win.
Kenton.
I hate to say this, but the deciding factor in this game is not going to be the person that everybody thinks, because everybody is thinking, oh, it's going to be Shedeur versus Caleb Williams, and that's going to be the situation here. That I'm telling you right now, this game is going to be about Zachariah Branch. The country may not know who he is yet. Zachariah Branch is a freshman do-everything guy. He is being compared to Percy Harvin and Tyreek Hill and guys of that ilk. He is all that and some. And I am telling you, Colorado does not have a single player that can match up with him in any situation to where you can say, I feel comfortable with my guy against his guy in space. Now, here's the problem with that. Lincoln Riley is better than anybody in the nation, potentially anybody in history, at getting his guy against your guy who he knows you can't do anything with him. I think Colorado covers, but it hurts my spirit to be a Detroiter and not pick Buffs. But we're going to go with that's a reference to Cartier glasses if y'all don't know. We're going to go with the Trojans here. Fight on.
It is the Swamp headed to the Bluegrass State, Florida, in Lexington. Dono, do you take Kentucky or the Gators?
I think Kentucky wins a close one. My confidence level on this is basically 50-50 between these two sides. Now, I will say our guy Brandon from Locked On Gators gave us a little bit of a negative insight, a reminder that probably doesn't help his cause very much, that the last time Florida went into Kentucky, Florida center, who is still their center, committed 7 penalties. Might want to cut that down a little bit, but I'm going to go with Leary and the Wildcats to win a close one.
Kenton.
Devin Leary, can you do something for me? The running game is going to be phenomenal. They're going to do everything that they can to run the ball. Or let me not say phenomenal. The running game is going to be the focal point for Kentucky. Yeah. That is what they're going to want to get established more than anything else. Can they do that against Florida right away and straight away? I'm not sure. But if Devin Leary can be enough, if he can be serviceable to good, I think that Kentucky comes away with this game. And with that being said, I think that he definitely will, despite the best protest of Brendan and all the muting in the world, will not be able to mute what is going to happen to his Gators tomorrow.
The board loves Kentucky, all three of us riding the Wildcats. Kansas and Texas is a top 25 game at DKR Texas Memorial Stadium. The last time these two teams will play. Head-to-head, Kenton, do you go with the Longhorns?
Absolutely. The Longhorns have been my boom team for a reason, and they're going to keep on booming. This is a Kansas team. They are exciting. They can put up points. They have the goods offensively. Defensively, there's some questions. There's still some questions there. There's still some pliability there. And honestly, there's still some depth issues there. Like, let's just be honest. They don't quite have the horses in the stable. The Les Miles and what he did to that program, he will never pay for his crimes. He should, though. He should. Somebody's going to make him answer for that at some point in time. But luckily, he was cashing those checks all the way to the bank for Texas because, again, the state that he left that program in, they're still not exactly fully recovered yet. Texas wins this game.
Dono?
It is a ranked matchup, like you said, but I hope Kansas enjoys being ranked right now because by the time the fresh batch of AP rankings come out on Sunday, they will not be ranked any longer. Texas is going to steamroll them at home. For so many years, guys, I, like most people outside of the Longhorn State, have been really annoyed by the constant chatter every year. The Horns are back. Texas is back. I think this year they might actually be back, and Kansas is not going to be the team that gets in their way. Hook 'em Horns this week.
Board loves the Horns against Kansas at home, despite it being a top 25 matchup. Let's go to tonight. Oregon State, Utah. The Beavs are 4-point favorites at home in Corvallis. Kenton Gibbs, what do you do with this game?
Cam Rising is back, folks, or he should be back at least. He should be back. Cam Rising is going to be back, and we can put to bed the questions about Utah's offense. They're going to be better. They're going to be much improved with a defense that they just shut the door. They do not. It's scoring on them. The chances are slim to none. And Slim's got his top hat on, looking around with a couple to-go plates, hoping nobody's judging them for it. The reality is very simple here. I think that Utah takes this game, but I do think that Oregon State is better than most of the nation would assume. I think that DJU looks good. He looks confident again and all that. And they play some good defense over there, but I just don't think they have enough to beat Utah in this one.
I know we haven't heard from our pals at Locked On Bets in a couple of weeks, but I'm going to steal a phrase from Lee Sterling from that show and say, wrong team favored. I get it. This is not your daddy's Oregon State, but they shouldn't be, even at home, a 4-point favorite against Utah tonight. The Rising return to me, even if there is some rust, I think that's going to make a big difference. I think a lot of folks are overreacting to their lack of offensive output a week ago. I think it's a bounce-back offensive game for Utah. I do think the game is close, but I'm going with the Utes to get it done.
The Utes win it on the road tonight. Board loves it. BYU hosting Cincinnati as an underdog tonight, missing Ben Bywater, one of the best defensive players the Cougars have to offer. I like BYU as a dog to win it at home. Dono.
Man, I hate to. We've agreed so much. I don't like it, but I'm gonna have to agree to again because I'm really not that sold on Cincinnati. So I'm gonna go with BYU. You already talked about how difficult the atmosphere is gonna be up there for the visiting team. So yeah. I'm gonna go with BYU.
Again, I've got Cincy covering just by the hairs on their chin. I think that they escape with a win in a crazy way here. Because again, it's not that I don't trust Keaton Slovis. DMX said something a long time ago that I found to be very prophetic. Okay. Trust everybody to be themselves, but trust in you to see them well. What are we not trusting in our eyes that we're looking at Keaton Slovis and saying, hey, he's going to win an important ball game? What's going on here? Don't get me wrong. He did the thing at Arkansas. That's all he's got in him. He's going to peter out. It's the Keaton Slovis recipe. He wins one game where you're like, oh, my God, could he be serious? And then for the rest of the season, tons of unserious activity from the young man. We'll get tons of unserious activity going forward from him, starting with this game.
Guys, our last two here, they're the biggest games of the week. Duke, number 17 in the country, hosting number 11 Notre Dame. Kenton, who wins?
Oh, boy, this is such a tough one because this is a big on big. This is an ugly, nasty, gritty. I want to make this dirty type of game. And the reality is I love Duke. They are a team. Defense has shown out every single week this year. I just don't know if I can trust them to beat Estime and company. And it's tough for me to go with Notre Dame in this one. And the more I think about it, the more I think about Notre Dame in big games. And I'm like, their record's terrible. But then it's also like, it's Duke football.
Right. Is this that big of a game? I mean, Ohio State, that's a big game. I don't think this is the same, no disrespect to Duke, but this is not a big game compared to that.
But this is why, and this is why I'm making this pick, because I don't think that Notre Dame understands this is Duke's Super Bowl, and Duke is going to be up for this game in a way that we have never seen, and Notre Dame is going to sleepwalk through at least the first quarter and a half, and I don't think Hartman has the ability to come back. Immaculate, you got me. If I was Lee Corso, I'd say, give me that hand and put the Duke Blue Devil on. I got the Blue Devils win the close one at home.
Dono, real quick.
As an old school Miami fan, nothing pains me more than picking Notre Dame to win a game, but unfortunately, I've got the Fighting Irish winning a close one at Duke.
Give me Duke for kicks and giggles. And last but not least, number 20 Ole Miss hosts number 13 LSU. I like the Rebels in this game. Ole Miss on top of LSU. Give me the underdog at home. Kenton.
Brian Kelly is going to piss down his leg. It's bedwetting time for Brian Kelly. It's big game. He's going to do it. Don't worry. They don't have they got cotton sheets there. They don't have the rubber one, so they're going to have to spew in that for a minute. Give me Lane Kiffin.
Dono.
Thing is, I don't know if I trust Lane Kiffin more than I trust Brian Kelly in this spot. It's a virtual tie there. I just think LSU's the better team. I'm going with LSU.
There it is. Folks, that is Locked On College Football Kickoff Live. That is Kenton Gibbs of Locked On ACC and Locked On Wolfpack. That is Alex Dono of Locked On Canes. Drake Toll from Locked On Big 12. Thanks for making us your Friday lunchtime listen every single week. This has been, it always will be, Locked On College Football Kickoff Live.